Yep, doing it right now. Here we go.
Okay. All right.
We're live. Okay, cool. We are live, even though you don't see it yet because there's a delay, Paul. Welcome, guys. I've got Paul Gelsobello here, famous studio mate, photographer. Follow us all kinds of stuff, right? You're going to tell us all about your awesome work. Yep, we've had you on once before. We did food, right? But you also I never do that. That was me. Okay, cool. We are live. Even though you don't see it. I'm opening too many windows. By the way, I do that every time. There we go. That's me screwing up the live stream. So this time we want to talk about your hotel work. So Paul does food, as we've done before. You do all kinds of stuff, right? But hotels are another big part of your.
We talked about food. Last time we talked about food, and today we're going to talk about hotels. Kind of, they go together. You know, when I started out shooting for the Guest Informant magazine way back in the day, I have a couple of copies, old copies. These are books that went in hotels, and we would spend awesome days on the beach shooting, and with my good buddy and art director Haynes Wilkerson. And these are later versions. Obviously, the covers changed, but the original versions were kind of, and they were in every hotel room across the country, every fine hotel. So that's how I got all my hotel contacts. Started shooting restaurants and interiors, and when you shoot restaurants, you had to shoot food. And then as the hotels came along, and I got to meet all the hotel people, the sales and marketing people, and that's when we started shooting big time, shooting all of the high-end hotels. And the first I started shooting, actually I photographed, believe it or not, I actually photographed the Watergate Hotel. That's old blast from the past for all you old timers. Shot the lobby of the Watergate, met them through the Guest Informant people, went on to shoot a few more. The St. Regis, which is a Starwood property, which ended up being the big thing we ended up doing starting in the early days, is Guest Informant decided to go to custom publishing. And back then, the internet, it was 2004, the internet was great, but it's not like it is now. So we ended up, they would do these amazing books, just a little more custom, a little more fancy. As you can see, this was a W. This was the first one. We'll call this the White Book, sort of like the White Album. You can see the little W flickering there. Really cool books that Haynes designed, and with all the cool people at W. I'm going to mention a few people: Ken Schwartz, art director; Ave Bradley, who's now gone on to bigger and better things at Kimpton's, which I still shoot for. But in the meantime, this is what we shot for, basically. So inside these beautiful books were absolutely gorgeous photography, and all of this stuff we would go around shooting, and just amazing photography. And we'll go through, like, for example, here's an image right here. You'll see W. If anybody's been to the W Hotel in Times Square, it has the most amazing lower lobby. You walk into this waterfall room, and I will show you in a little while the original film, unretouched, which we'll get into some retouching, Dan, as we talked about. So there's stuff that just didn't exist, and we'd have to create it. So, but anyway, so we would do all this kind of really cool photography, and of course, not to mention, shooting food, hotels. When you're working with hotels, you're shooting food, working with their restaurants. So this was the main media back then. The internet, if anybody's been to hey, you recognize this, right? This has been hanging in the studio for years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Cool shot. And again, just all this really cool stuff. And of course, that media was the main media. And then, of course, W did all these cool postcards. And again, I'll show you the original film from this back in the day. These were shot on 6x7, by the way, for all of you photographers out there that are going to want to know what we shot. Back then, when I first started doing this in the early 2000s, we all know digital was not great back then. I don't know about you, Dan, but It just wasn't great. This was shot on my RZ67 Pro 2, which they eventually came out with a digital back for, but that was crap. But anyway, so they would do postcards, and not to mention postcards, they would do all these really cool mailers. I don't know if you can see this, you know, there's hotels. So you're shooting for all media. You're shooting for books back then and the website. But the cool thing I found, and this will be kind of cool for you, is I found the original Polaroid for this shot. I don't know if you can see it. I mean, if I bring it up too close, there's the original shot. Polaroid didn't really hold back then. Fuji, what was it called? I don't even remember. We were using flash, probably using 669.
Yeah, 669 was not
color is never right. But this is more true to the color of what the film looked like. So, but these cool books I saved. This was our high-tech record keeping, by the way. This is what our clients would look at. Now they're spoiled. I'm on a 27-inch iMac here, which I bring on smaller, you know, bring on shoots, and then we also shoot to our laptop and an external monitor, and we'll go through that later on. But anyway, so you can see the different types of media. Oh, and one more thing, hotel keys. So it's a lot of media that you're shooting for. It's not just the web, but today I'm finding about 90% of it's web. Back then it was more books. So
yeah, I think what's interesting that people may not realize, especially if they're just getting into more commercial work, is that there's pictures everywhere, and you just they're so just they're, since they're everywhere, you stop noticing them in a sense. But all that has to be created. Like anywhere you go, like you mentioned the key, that's like a classic thing, right? The everybody gets a key to the hotel, or they get a little pamphlet, and all those photos had to be made by somebody. So
yeah, and high-end hotels will. I mean, I've had about like 20 of these with my photos on them. Of course, this is the only one that's left. I mean, you know, I saved one. Okay. But it's on my website. You can see the photo. This was the Hotel Rouge in Washington, D.C. Outside, they got these really cool statues. And we, you know, when you go and shoot a hotel, you're not just shooting a room. As we'll get into some of the pictures later. You shoot everything. I mean, you shoot every little, and that was the beauty of W, is that W hotels ended up, you would do, I mean, every little detail would be shot. Every little detail. There were so many fine details in a hotel. For example, I mean, they would spend, like, everything you see here was something that was shot, okay, in one of their hotels. And I would spend hours sometimes with my 35 millimeter camera going around just shooting a lot of these little detail shots. And it was fun. It was fun. I mean, like I said, when I was going through doing this, and every once in a while I go through an archive. I've got, I don't know about you, Dan, but I may have been shooting a little longer than you, but I've got probably 30 terabytes of storage in this little office here. And it redundant. A lot of it's redundant, backed up twice on other hard drives. And it's scary with the amount of storage. What's that?
So there's a question from Jamil. Yeah. What were the books used mostly for? Advertising, guests, or prospective investors?
Okay, let's take the Black Book. W did a Black Book. Remember, we saw the White Book. This is like sort of the Black Book. You know, Spinal Tap, the Black Album. They were goofing, but anyway, this was the Black Book. And these books go in the rooms, and they would feature. There's that photo again. W. See how they use them in. I mean, the photos are. You do a good job with the photo. Forget it. It hurts you in a way, because sometimes if you do too good a job, you don't go back to shoot it, you know, for a while. But anyway. Here's that photo again. This was used in every W hotel would get one of these books. And as you can see all these photos here, every one of these books would be in a room. And again, they would advertise themselves in the books, obviously. They would place advertising. There would be advertisers that would pay, you know, high-end advertisers, jewelry companies, whatnot. But this would be for each tourist to look and see, and obviously W had their own agenda. They'd have editorials and things. With the guest informants, it was a little more generic, where these would go in the hotel rooms and they'd talk a little bit about the individual hotel, but they'd be just chock full of just advertising. So that's what these books were for.
Right. So you end up in a new, I mean, if people will travel, right? You end up in a hotel somewhere and you're like, whoa, what's around? You know, especially if you're a place where it's more touristy. That's what the second book is. It's like all the local sites and stuff, but they still use photography because they want people to pick it up and look at it, you know?
But the difference between two books and the generic books is this one in a hotel, let's say a Holiday Inn in Florida. Okay. This one was Southwest Florida. Okay. Let's say it went into a Westin or whatever, which was owned was part of W Starwood. But anyway, this unique book would only be in a W hotel. So this was a custom published piece, obviously more high end, and they would feature every one of their hotels. At the time, they had 30, 40 hotels around the world, and every photo, we'd have photos, which was cool for me because I remember doing the first shoot. We did, I think, 11 hotels in 30 days. We shot 5 out of New York, 2 out of Chicago, 3 out of Atlanta. I mean, New Orleans. We just go from city to city and shoot, you know, and these photos would end up in all the books on the website. And of course, like I said, in all those mail printed pieces. So, and everybody that goes to my website, PaulGelsobelloStudio.com, if you want to go on there now.
I put a link in the chat, guys, if you want to.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty much one other cool thing here is I'll show you. Haynes, not every art director, let's get this straight. Today, because of my experience and how long I've been doing this, I hate to say how many years, people kind of tend to rely on my team. I work with a team, and I'm fortunate, and I'm going to shout out to my team, my assistant, who's my tech now, Alex Medina. I don't know if he's listening. And Heather Bean are my main team. And Alex is my main assistant in tech, meaning he mans the computer. And Heather is our set and prop stylist and just about does everything, including art direction, including anything to do with the set. We do pre-pro meetings, and Heather will log hours of meetings talking, doing walkthroughs of the hotels. And this was basically what this is. This was a walkthrough of a hotel. Art director would do a sketch. We would do the shoot. And then somewhere here, I actually have the finished shot. I'll find it as I'm fiddling through here. But I will show you the film in a minute. It was one of those hotels. Should have been more prepared on this one. Anyway, I had it, but anyway, I'll show you the original film. I'll find it later, but that picture ended up in this book. So that's how it worked. And that's today, cool. A lot different today. Today it's clients on set with you, constantly follows you from room to room. We are tethered, shoot everything tethered. And for those of you who don't know, camera is hooked to the computer and the client sees everything immediately right there. And by the way, Polaroid cost more than film back in the day because you can't imagine how much Polaroid we went through to get a shot. And today,
right? Yeah. And also the time it took, right? I started thinking about like, you shoot a Polaroid, take like 2 minutes, right, to wait for it.
Yeah. 669 was at least a
one
minute.
Little change. Yeah, it's like, so like it actually slowed down the process a bit because you had to wait for it. When you actually went to shoot the film, that was usually the fastest part because everything else is done.
With a hotel, and we'll get into this when we start looking at some of the images, with a hotel, you're on a timeline, okay? Whether it be, you're shooting a suite, you're shooting a common area, a lobby, you only have a certain amount. You take, if you have a 3 or 4 day shoot and you've got X amount of shots, you have to space those shots. And we know in this business, time is everything. And unfortunately, rarely are you ahead of schedule. And when you are ahead of schedule, boy, you can breathe. But you really always have to make up time somewhere. And you do. You end up making up time. But I've been fortunate enough to say that every shoot, whether, especially the ones where I'm not in my local town, we've been really, really fortunate. We've never missed a shot. We've always been able to get them done in a timely manner. And, it's choreographed. It's basically it. And the best part of it, you're staying in a great hotel, got a great room. A lot of the rooms that I'll show you are probably my rooms, that I just, stayed in. It was just night, great dinners, great breakfasts, always lunch, but it's hard work and it's long, long hours. Some of the early W shoots, because we were on time constraints, and this is no joke, 20-hour days easily, because you were started out at 7 a.m. and you end up in the bar at night waiting for the drunks to finish so you could finish shooting the bar, doing interior, because these places don't close. And you're laughing. Yeah. I know
the drunks.
People don't ever want to leave.
You mean the hotel patrons, Paul, not the drunks.
No, the hotel patrons are mostly in their rooms sleeping. It's the ones at the bar at 3 a.m. when you want to shoot that don't want to leave.
Yeah, no, I've been there. Yeah, that's
yeah,
crazy.
I know.
Oh my God. Anyway, so I mean, not as a drinker.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so people are asking about like links to photos. I think a lot of what Paul's showing us now is like older stuff, but you're gonna have newer. He's gonna show stuff on his website as well.
Well, let's go to the website first. Can I share my screen here, or
I'll
share my screen? Okay.
Make sure you don't have anything weird.
I'm gonna share my screen. Can everybody see this now? Yeah. We're up. Let's let's start with the Warwick, New York here, which is a recent photo. And I set up a whole page here. So obviously we can go through these photos very quickly, and then I'll go into, of course, the website is lagging. This is a lobby of a suite, okay? And a lot of times, a lot of these shots, they want you to shoot the lobby. You don't know what you're going to encounter or what you're going to do. So it's like an on the spot quick shot. It makes the client happy. We're documenting the room. These are, just quick shots here. I'm going to go through everything quickly because we have time. Here's a suite. And again, when we discussed and is kind of mixing light. And that's what I do. That's what my team does. Basically here, and if anybody's interested, I know the budding photographers are, and the pros who want to get the techniques that I do, that's fine. I mix, as you can see, this is a strobe light, one strobe head, and a lot of daylight coming through the windows, and a lot of tungsten light, and everything hopefully is on a dimmer switch, or I bring lots of dimmer switches with these incandescent lights. And Dan, you and I talked a few nights ago about there was a period about 5, 7, 8, 9 years ago when those fluorescent tubes came out, and every hotel in the world had them. I had to literally buy cases of incandescent lights, and we had to travel around with them because those tubes were just a color temperature nightmare. We use a color, obviously we color correct everything, but as you can see here, we mix, and I like the warmth. I don't know if anybody could see my thing. I like the warmth of the light. So that's what we do. We like to mix light. By the way, the bathroom here, if you could see that, Dan, the bathroom, I had someone, because there was no dimmer in there was an actual assistant in that bathroom shutting the light on and off for longer timer exposures so we could get
manual dimmer
exposure. Okay.
Yeah, and then, I've been there.
Yeah. I'm going to keep just going through. I don't want to go through.
So Paul, there's a question about from Kevin. Like if you're going to try to get this kind of work, like what kind of stuff would you have in your portfolio? Like, would you say, like, to a new photographer starting out, like, what do you think they need to show if they're trying to like break in?
I mean, you've got to be able to light an interior. I mean, if you're going to do a hotel, you've got to be able to work with interiors. Obviously, you got to know how to light an interior. I mean, here again, I'm working here with high-end this is high end. I mean, this is gorgeous.
Yeah,
Not
clearly.
every room is going to look like this, but if the better, the when you have interiors, if you want to shoot hotels, you're going to need interiors, definitely, more than anything else. The food's a plus because they're going to ask you to shoot restaurants. And as I'll show you later, you're going to still need to shoot, Dan. You know, I shoot people. I started out as a fashion photographer. You're going to shoot portraits of the general managers. And I've got some samples of that. You know, it's on my website. But basically, you've got to learn how to light an interior. And again, my background came from a travel magazine. I met the art director because I was working with a photographer at the time as an assistant. But I was still shooting my own, having my own stuff. He was a fashion photographer, and I started shooting those books. And it wasn't the glamorous part of it. It was just kind of the retail shots, the editorial things, and things got progressed. And the more I shot interiors, the better I got at it. And you know, it's not, you know, something to take lightly. Interiors are not easy to do. And they're a lot easier today because I can do things now with cameras and PC lenses, perspective control lenses, and in Photoshop that I can create and keep my lines straight. You know, that's very important. In the old days, you'd shoot a 4x5 interior. You, Dan, you know, we both came, a guy who shot 4.5, 8.10, tilts and swings, and you can't do that type of work with this because you're shooting 6, 7, 8 shots a day. So, again, here's a good example of mixing light. You could see beautiful light coming through, and I'm big on shadows. I love shadows. And here's another stickler. When I got the Warwick job, this is the Warwick Hotel, the owner's son, I think, asked me, why should I hire you over the other teams? And I was up, and that's the other thing. You're going to bid on the job too. So, you know, you got to be prepared to be rejected. And we're rejected all the time. You know, you can't get every job. You're not going to get them. But the big thing is the details. If you can see those lampshades, that's what I told them. I said, you spend a lot of money on lampshades. I actually said lampshades. And I said, I'm going to make sure you're going to see every detail in those lampshades and every detail in your bed sheets. And this is a good sample. I mean, bed sheets are so easily to burn out and, you know, blow out. White obviously is a tough thing to shoot. And when you've got a lot of different contrasts going on, you've got to make sure your densities are all there. So, but anyway, so that's a bit of that hotel. The next thing I think we go on is we talked about bars, and I get a lot of people liking this photo here. I think it's one of my most liked photos. And of course, we're lagging again. People love this photo. And shot at 3 a.m. Sunday night. It was in September, early September. I remember it was football season because I was invited to a football game, and I said, no, I'm working that night. We got on set around 9 p.m. Bar closed at 10. But the key when you're shooting this stuff is we're not just shooting this shot. Okay. And there's a lot of things going on here. I'm using incandescent light. I'm using one strobe head. By the way, I still use a lot of gels. I don't know if anybody out there knows about gels, Roscoe's, OCTs, OCT. I use neutral density filters, Tough Lux. Usually one strobe head though. Here, I don't know. Can you see my arrow, Dan? I'm moving it around.
Yeah, we can see your arrow.
I paint with light, and I use people who are familiar with Lowell lighting. Lowell, Mr. Lowell recently died. He invented gaffer tape. We should all bow our head to the inventor of gaffer tape. He was also a lighting genius. So what I'll do is we'll just take an Omni, and I have some sample. I actually have a sample of my assistant painting with light in a room shot to bring up the ambiance of the room. So if anybody ever knows about shooting botanicals, leaves eat light. It's almost like you might as well be shooting black velvet. So you really have to get the density going in there in order to see the details. So, but anyway, so you're not only shooting that shot, you're shooting the reverse angle, which takes time. Probably doing a little of Heather, our prop set, resetting everything. So the first shot, I was standing in that corner, and here's the dramatic reverse angle that the client needs. Remember, all of these shots, too, work for the sales. This is the Kimberly Hotel, the rooftop. Great bar, by the way. 50th Street and Lex. Amazing, amazing hotel and bar. Rooftop bar, outdoor. Again, one other thing that happened that night, the stars were out. We planned this for 2 months. It could have been a rainy, cloudy night. This entire roof opens up. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah.
Point my arrow. That's a sliding roof. And those little specks up there in the sky, for those astrologers out there, those were the stars out that night. And because of the time exposure, I was able to capture, somebody said it was Orion's belt. I don't know, my assistant. I know nothing about astrology, but those are definitely not specks. It looked like dust, but those are stars. But anyway, this was a really cool shot. Took a lot of time to do. We started shooting these things at 9 o'clock at night. We finished at like 4 in the morning, slept for about 2 or 3 hours, went back and came back and did the daytime shots. Okay, so, basically.
So it's a question about using speed lights.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think the intention here is instead of like a full-on strobe. I mean, I would venture to say no. I mean, I think they could be useful, but you need a lot of power when you're doing some of this stuff.
Well, it's funny you say that. I'm going to stop the screen share for a minute. And the speed lights, actually, I do carry a Profoto. What is it? The ones the A1s, right? Yeah, I have one. My packs, I have about 5 or 6 packs. They're all between 2400 watt seconds and 1200 watt seconds. Now, for the lay person, means they're pretty powerful packs. I'm sometimes dropping those things down to 50 watt seconds. So a speed light could technically work, but I don't think a speed light has the broad range. I use 9 12-inch reflectors with Tough Lux, or I'll use a Shimera behind me, and I need a broad scape. So a speed light could work. And I actually did one shot on the rooftop at the Kimberly. We were doing some social media shots for them. I threw a Profoto on the top and used a speed light, but I was shooting people. Totally different. I would never recommend it. I mean, people can try it, but I don't think you get a broad enough range with a speed light.
Yeah, I think you're going to limit yourself. It's not that you can't. I say this a lot, that if that's what you got, certainly you could make a shot with speed light. You could pop it, you could move it around. But the thing is, again, you're working on a time constraint. You might want to put it in a giant Shimera. You might want to back it way up.
Right.
So that's why you want the more powerful strobes generally, not because you need the power.
Right.
Necessarily.
Again, lighting is all relative to what you can do. I'm just going to throw this up. This is the W Hotel. I don't know. Anybody see this?
Yep.
I mean, basically, solving a problem here. How are you going to light a hallway? I mean, I use candles. I mean, I asked the client, look, the ceiling's light is beautiful. Let's expose for the ceiling. When you expose for the ceiling, the rest of the shot looked like crap. So I asked her how many candles we had. And, it could be a fire hazard, obviously, that, but who knows? If they're right behind, the elevators are on the left. This is the old Germanic life insurance building. That's the Union Square W. How do you light a room? You can use candles. I mean, and that's exactly what we did here. I mean, it solved the problem. And I think way in the back, I threw a tungsten light back there, no strobe. So it's, whatever works for you. I mean, obviously, this is the lobby of that same hotel. Obviously, a total opposite of modern and the old world together. Can you see that? They're both up there. And basically, I'm just using, I think in this particular, I bounced a Toto light, which was 1,000 watts off the back wall and exposed for the rest of the image using candles. And I think I wasn't even using strobes in that. So there are instances where you're not even using strobe. Candlelight. Here's a shot W used. There's no lighting used. This is the actual shot. There were lamps over tables down in New Orleans, and we shot that. This is the actual DSLR image. And of course, they're being as creative as Ken was back then doing these shots. They just turn around. So there's no lighting there. I mean, it's just what's there. So there's no rule. Here's a shot where they sent me down there. They wanted these, this is the stairway, and they wanted those diamonds in the middle. And because every day the sun comes shining through the windows. Guess what? It was the rainy, cloudy day. There was no sun. So there we were, my assistants lining the entire stairway with strobes. I mean, and then, I probably was using a lot of power. So there's strobe light. Here's that original shot off a 6x7 film. Again, this was EPY, literally just shooting a time exposure. And of course, that's what ended up as the back page ad. So basically what they did was because it was 6x7, obviously the quality was amazing. They were able to pull out just a little bit of that image, and there's your image, there's your ad, so no lights were used there, no lights. So another room here, candle lights. By the way, if you think those candles got straight for anyone, there's someone right there lining those. That's one of my assistants helping the prop stylist out. How do you like this room? Black. You walk into a room, the walls are black, literally bright red couches. Dan, the contrast is just, you walk in there and you scratch your head. We painted with light, time exposure, and just turned Omni lights on with dimmers or DP lights or whatever we had, L lights, and we just hit the walls with black light, with lights. So to just get the reflections on the wall, because otherwise you'd have no shot. I mean, the density was incredible. The other thing we could discuss is, again, shooting outside. Here's a shot, W down in Atlanta, sunrise. Guess what? They wanted us to go back and shoot it at dusk. So sometimes you're doing shots twice right in one day. Hopefully the weather's good. So, that's, again, speed lights, whatever. I just like, so whatever works, that's what I say to make the shot good.
Yeah, I think that's it, right? You need to be able to, I mean, these are high-end jobs. You need to be at the top of your craft to be able to mix all these different types of light together. There's no probably, cut and paste formula. It's actually something that I talk about a lot, where I'd say that, like, I shoot mostly people, obviously, but I'm always like, I don't like when they give me specific diagrams. I don't think they're that useful of a lighting diagram, because every job is different. You just have to understand how light works and then use it to.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, this is, as you know, one of the most important tools in our kit, our color checker. I carry these, and you got to buy them every couple of years because they kind of fade in color. And we calibrate our monitors, obviously. So we calibrate our monitors, but not one client has ever calibrated a monitor. So, when you send the client, you're hoping that the color they see is the color you give them. And of course, the printer will know that in the books, but on the web, forget about it. All is lost. But we spend, and I think I may have I'll show you. But anyway, this is a really important tool. It's a color checker. You need to get one of those, and that's how you white balance and color correct your images. So you can obviously see where you're going as far as color goes. Lighting, again, here's another good sample. I don't know if you see this, Dan. It's up,
Yep.
It's a room. This is all natural light coming through the room. Lamps are all on dimmer switches, obviously. You'd be surprised how low those lamps are, just to show them. Then what the client wanted, obviously there are rooms in the hotel that don't have a view. So we just close the shades, and then of course by magic, we just give them that. And that's the same shot, both ways. So you can magically see how it just changes. But here, again, color correction, lighting, one strobe, natural light. Here, we're using still the same light, but we want to give them a little bit of a feel, a little bit of atmosphere. This, by the way, is the Warwick Hotel, this particular shot. Let's see, what else? We paint. Oh, here's just to show you. You see this shot here? Well, it's as simple as this. This color checker stays with us. It's Capture. We're using Capture One Pro, by the way, if anybody wants to know. And this particular image will go in with the selects, because I will have that image all through my workflow to make sure I can go back into Photoshop in camera raw. We shoot raw images. Everything is raw. Nothing is shot JPEG or TIFF. Everything is raw. So there's your image, and you can probably see it's almost color correct. Not there yet, but we probably made some tweaks, and you can see everything is color correct now, pulled out. So nice clean whites, crisp blacks, and the colors are just right on. If you walked into the room, that's the way you would see the color. And of course, this color checker makes sure that my clients get the exact color carpet, that they paid for in the photo, right, and the pillows or whatever, the throws. Same here. Here's another shot. Here's another good sample of utilizing strobe, daylight, and incandescent light. And we talked about lower lights before, Dan. I don't know if you could see. Yeah. You could see my arrow here. My thing here. I use what they call little L lights, little LOLs, and I kick light them on the floor. They're 100 watts. I put dimmer switches on them, and I probably drop them down to 20, 30 watts. And just, it's so nice when you have little kicks, little things. I know the hotel doesn't have a floor light, but I think it brings out the ambiance. It shows the material, shows the ambiance. You could actually see the corner here. You wouldn't have seen this lit, but it gives the appearance that the lamp is lighting this corner. Of course, then we've got the nice daylight coming in. And then if you look over here, you've got this dense black lacquer, armoire where they've got their TV. And of course, what do you do with that? You make sure then you expose for something behind you. So what I did was we threw some light on a red wall behind us, and that reflected back in, and make sure, because then you need something. Otherwise, this would have just been a dark mess over here, just a completely dark hole.
Right. So you don't hit the lacquered surface with light, because that'll just reflect.
Absolutely.
You light something that it's going to see. It's like a mirror,
Absolutely. Brilliant point. You're not lighting it with lacquer. Yes, because you could see the reflection of the sky. But of course, this is natural. This is what you're going to see in the room. Yeah. But there's I leave a little highlight sometimes, because you want something that it glisten. It's like a diamond, But yes, right. This was a reflective surface, and being that, but it was, I'm talking about, there we're using our 1200 watts or 2400 watts of bounce to get that reflection in that black lacquer. And we often do that with televisions too, black TV screens, because they look like hell. These flat screens are on these beautiful suites, and they're just black holes. So, but anyway, right. So that's a good sample of how we're utilizing 3 different types of lighting in that one small area.
So there's a couple of lens questions, Paul. So
sure, yeah.
I'm sure it probably depends on the shoot, but is there a lens like focal length that you're using the most? And with the really wide angle shots, is there a reason why you don't like?
I like to use. I don't have one here. Let me stop the screen share here. I've got my D. Oh, by the way, anybody knows I use a D850s today. These are just
fancy,
unbelievable cameras. a far cry from the Kodak DC. I'm going to show my age now. I had the privilege and the honor of actually using the Kodak DCS 100. There was a black and white one and a color one, and I for guest informant, they asked me to test it out. I had a Kodak rep through my Arkin-Mito. Remember Arkin, Dan? You're old enough to remember where you bought your film. We used to buy our film there, and I had a Kodak rep, and because we spend tens of thousands of years on film, and Kodak rep, they lent me the camera, and of course the highlights were completely blocked out and the shadow details were filled with grain. But today, this is a far cry. Our iPhones are just below those DCS away. But anyway, this lens here, this one isn't my 19 that we use, but you could see, can you see that?
Yep. Perspective correction.
See. Can you see the lens? It's a PC lens, PC. And this lens is literally, I have the 85 on here right now. I just did a food shoot not too long ago with my good friend Alyssa from who you met, Jenkins Culinary Resources. Shout out to our food peeps, Alyssa Jenkins and Heather Beam. We just did a shoot, and I did a packaging shoot, and this is the 85 perspective control lens. And these I use. The 19 is unbelievable. We used the 19 on a couple of shots, but that's okay. The PC lenses are good. They have their limitations. They shift. I mean, you can see them, and anybody can see they shift. They really are. They're not going to replace a 4x5 or an 8x10 Deerdorf. But they certainly do their job. And when you learn how to use them, by the way, they actually tilt too. I mean, these things are just amazing lenses. They cost you about $2,500 a pop, but they're the tools of our trade. So that's one lens, PC lenses we would use. But I like to use, believe it or not, my workhorse lens. I have a couple of these. Sometimes we set up twice. This is my 17 to 35 zoom, and this is a powerful tool. I'll tell you why. Not a prime lens. And for those of you out there that don't know what a prime lens is a single fixed lens, like a 15 millimeter lens or a 24 millimeter lens. This is a zoom, and for a zoom lens, I use Nikon. It is as sharp from edge to edge. A lot of the shots I'm showing you today was shot with this 17 to 35. And then, of course, the real piece, the real toy that I love, and I'll show you some rooms. This is the 14 millimeter rectilinear. This thing, it looks like a fisheye. Can you see that glass? I think you guys can see it. See the piece of glass on there? This is a chunk of lens. This thing, 14 millimeter, it doesn't distort. It doesn't distort. It's amazing. And as a matter of fact, let me get out of here and I'll screen share. I'll show you some samples of that 14 millimeter. Let me see what we got here. Here's the 14 millimeter at its finest.
Is the 14 2.8?
14 2.8, a 2.8 lens. That's right. But I'm shooting it at the sweet spot. Probably it closes down to 22. Let me see. Which this one? I'm so confused. Wait, this one closes down to 22, right? But I'm never at 22. That's not. We as pros, we understand this. A lens has a sweet spot, and yeah, sometimes you're going to be stopped down, but probably in a shot like this, you can see there's really no distortion. It's 14. It's showing the room wide, and probably around between 11 and a half, 16. It's somewhere that lens field is just it's perfect. It's sharp edge to edge. I don't think I've ever used it at 22. If you go, and of course, again, going back into shooting, revisiting a room twice, they set the room up for a classroom, and then they set the room up for obviously another type of party. This was the Warwick, by the way. Another example. Oh, by the way, while we're in with the Warwick, this is the 14 millimeter again, and this was one of their rooms. I just want to show you what we run up against with clients. And believe me, these are great clients. But the morning we showed up, this was the first room to shoot. And I was informed that the red chairs had to be gray. So if you think you've got an issue when you walk into a room about setting up and making every chair look like a soldier, and of course, retouching the ceiling, lighting a room of this size where basically, thankfully, we had some columns, bringing in natural light. You can see the natural light on the floor. Now I've got to change the color. So Alex, my tech, my assistant, luckily he's a certified Capture One a genius, and he actually, we took the client side, put him in front of the computer and said, pick a color. And we were able to isolate the reds and actually we stayed with it. Now, there's two things we do. We can either process through Capture One. I don't know if you use Capture One, right, Dan?
Yep.
Capture One Pro? Yeah, I don't know if you process. I don't tend to like to process, but we did process the images. But as you can see on the left, this is a TIFF. I created this. I also keep a raw file for myself always, because if I go into Photoshop and I don't like what Capture did, I want the raw, untouched, processed shot. So actually, I ended up doing this. So all of these shots that you see here all had red chairs. And you can see the detail, which is sort of cool. You can still see the detail. So I'm not going to give away. Photoshop's going to be another lesson. But
you have to teach me how to do that. I couldn't do that to save my life. I'd be sending that out.
Well, I did it, and I got to be honest with you. It really was a challenge, and it's one of the, like, when you say retouching, I didn't even consider this retouching. This was just, lunacy, changing. Obviously, this is what happens, and I'm going to get into another detail of when something doesn't exist, you have to create. So from this, obviously, there's my assistant, or one of my assistants in the shot there. We didn't even begin. Also, by the way, hotels love when and ask to retouch. See all the air conditioning vents? They're all gone. So there's just some major retouching going on in there in that respect. Another great shot. Probably this is one of the biggest rooms. This is the Monaco, I think, in Philadelphia, Kimpton property. Great clients, great people, great hotels. Probably the best restaurants you'll ever want. Kimpton's hotels and restaurants. If you ever get a chance to stay at one, you don't even have to leave the hotel. The restaurants are amazing. This room, again, luckily, stars aligned with me. Again, no pun intended with the stars, but beautiful daylight coming through. But look at those chandeliers, Dan. There was hundreds of them. I had to make sure we could see every chandelier. And we had an assistant manning the light switches, because time exposures, we had strobes hidden with gels, obviously, and there was all kinds of stuff here. And of course, and then you've got to do the reverse angle. So now you've got to literally stop, turn around, and go. And of course, Heather, the stylist, has to make sure, here you can't see much down front, but she's got to work her butt off, making sure every pen and every glass and everything is in place. And of course, this little pedestal, I was thrilled that I had a plexiglass pedestal. So as you can see, there's a little hot spot here. We threw a little L light with a gel on it and kind of got a little flicker there, so you could see it's plexiglass.
Right,
But,
so it shows up.
Yeah.
What I think is super interesting about these, that people it's good that you're explaining, because I feel like a lot of people see shots like this and they just think you can walk into the room and shoot it like that. And
No.
To make it look like it's not lit.
No. We want to make it look like it does look like, and I'm not saying, because I did it, but it really looks like there's just daylight. It's just lit by daylight. I mean, that's the key here. And look at, every light is on, and it's just, it's natural. It looks natural, and it takes time. A shot like this, I think we got on set at 7:30, and we probably worked about 3 to 4 hours. doing these two angles here. You know, how long does it take? Sometimes that, but again, going back to, I don't know if this was the Palomar, this was Philadelphia. Again, here's another thing where you're in a room, beautiful view. You want that sky on there. You want the natural light, but you don't want it to look strobed. And I use a strobe, and in some instances, this may have been 2 strobes in here. Oh, by the way, I never use an umbrella, so don't ask. Everything is either bounced or gelled. I haven't used an umbrella. I don't even use one when it rains, I don't think. So it's, you want it to look natural. You want it to look daylit, but we are strobe lit here. And of course, those wall sconces on dimmer switches, you want to make sure the botanicals are well lit. And I'll get back into that when I pull up some other. Here's the same room. You know, do the reverse. You got to go back in, turn around, and relight. Luckily, there's double doors in these rooms, and you know, I'm able to. Again, also I travel with a lot of dimmer switches for the lamps, and if the wall sconces aren't on dimmers, I'm having someone. We do longer exposures, and we just shut the lights real quick. Like let's say we do a 2-second exposure, those switches are shut off within a nanosecond. Because you know, when you're exposing, you don't realize how bright those lights are. A couple more here.
So Paul, a couple questions.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about my typos, by the way, in the chat. People,
yeah.
Resolutions. Okay, so
the typos are on Dan, not me. I'm not.
Yeah, you're not typing anything. I have to actually, right. So that was a funny word. Well, my typos. Anyways, commenting about the ceilings, like, do you like the ceiling separate? Like, is there a trick to that you were willing to review?
No. I light the rooms. As you can see, here's one where, you know, the ceiling is lit as lit. The only thing I do is I pull out the air conditioning vents, the ugly fire alarms, and the fire department must hate me because I remove every fire alarm. Smoke alarms, fire alarms are all removed. That's the difference between shooting with hotels. They really want you to clean those receptacles, you know, anything, lighting receptacles, anything's got to be cleaned up. When I shoot for my interior designers and the architects, those guys, you got to leave everything in because those are there for a reason. But if you look at the
you don't do a lot of HDR?
The way I work, I will do exposures. Yes, I will shoot. I mean, we all do it. We'll shoot 4 or 5. I mean, in the old days, we bracketed with film. I mean, if you bracketed film, it's basically, in the old days, that was HDR, but you pick up, and I don't know how they, you know, printers would work that way. You know, they had, God, you know, it was a nightmare. But yes, I will shoot different exposures, but I tend to try, like you see, we tend to try to light things on set the way they are, you know, but there are many times you'll have 4 or 5 exposures and layers in, and then I blend, I'll erase, there are certain areas that you have to use HDR. I mean, some of the earlier W shots, when everything was shot on film, see, that's the difference. We came from an era where we had to do it in the film. We had to do it on film. So I still try to do it. I'm not going to say on film. I try to get it in the shot. And listen, Photoshop is amazing. There's no two ways about it. It is absolutely amazing.
So for the people, this is not for you, Paul, but people keep saying the computer screen is out of focus. The computer screen is not out of focus. If you're seeing that when you're watching it, it's probably the resolution of the video coming to you. Refresh your video. It's sharp. It's just there's a lot of data being pushed right now.
Yeah, we're pushing a lot of images, and sorry about that. The images are sharp.
Multiple people keep saying it. Yeah, no, they realize that. They can tell that for them the whole computer screen looks out of focus, but it's not. I can see it's up here. So it's the way it's being.
This is another. I'm going to get out of the meeting rooms in a minute. I just want to go over that.
Well, actually, this is just like a regular convention. We're at a meeting room all day.
Right. This is people don't realize I'm showing all these meeting rooms. This is their number one. I mean, this is where they make their big money. They rent these rooms out to conventions. I mean, this happens to be the Kimberly, which is a smaller room, but you're in these rooms for hours. This was just shot only a month ago, February. This was shot in February. We were in this room all day. And basically, I'm just going to give you a quick run through. We had to make it look like a morning, beautiful breakfast meeting. You know, obviously the TV screen, the podium. Then we would do like the afternoon, you know, kind of 2 o'clock afternoon meeting, maybe right after lunch, and then set up for dinner. So this is all shot in the same day at different times. Lighting is different times. And, you know,
And that's neat. It's funny how that changes it, right? The mood of the room, it changes, but it's the same, more or less the same setup.
Oh, by the way, I just threw this in, by the way, if this is a room that most of us will never get in. And if you are, and you could stay in this is the presidential suite at the St. Regis.
Nice.
I happen to be fortunate like 10 rooms, 3 bedrooms, library, you know, dining room, kitchen, full kitchen. Oh God, it was just unbelievable. But anyway, I threw it in there, and this is one from my old days. I've been lighting the same way, but I probably didn't control my my ceiling lights as I like. So we've honed that and defined that way better. Just wanted to show you. Here's that film from that shot that I told everybody. Remember that shot that was in the W book? Literally no retouching. Here's your film. Here's your TIFF image, and you saw it printed. So, by the way, this gentleman is lit. Just so everybody knows, going back to lighting, there's about 5 candles below his face. The computer screen was stuck straight, and I couldn't put a light there because he was the way it was set. So we just lit him slightly with some candles, and it printed up just like that.
Candles everywhere.
You love candles, right? Can't learn to light by candlelight. It's really
it's really fun. I mean, well, now there's all these like tiny little LED lights you could probably just stick on there, but you know, like
absolutely
the fact that you're able to improvise and understand that like that would work for you is really right. You know, and again, that doesn't mean guys you just run out and light everything with candles. It means that know what light does and know how to use it. Right. Is really
right. Just getting back to that one room there, I showed you that. I have here a great shot of a ballroom. We're going to get out of these ballrooms, but the painting with light, we'll go into another folder, but I just want everybody to keep their eye on this section here. And this is a trick I'm going to show everybody. But again,
hold on. We got to charge him for that.
You got to charge me for this trick. But as you can see, that's what the shot would normally look like if someone else shot it, you know, in there. But what we tend to do is we like to paint, and we want to make those tables pop a little bit. So all of this lighting in here, this is just one. Hold on.
For some reason, I still see that W shot. Is that the one you're talking about?
No, I'm in Photoshop here.
You're not sharing the Photoshop screen.
Oh,
you got to stop sharing that screen, then share the Photoshop screen.
All right, hang on a second.
Good thing I'm paying attention to you.
Yeah, you're paying attention. I'm talking to myself here.
Here we go.
How's that? You guys see now?
Yep.
Okay, so let's pay attention to the table here. Again, this is a beautiful. Obviously, this isn't a finished image. I left this image up. The exit sign still in the door. This all had to be rebuilt. That's one of the problems and the retouching tricks that you've got to know. So, but this particular shot gives you a good idea of how I like tables. I mean, there aren't any spotlights on these tables, and you can see shadows. So if you pay attention to the left side of the table, I'm going to turn the light on and off. And basically, it's just a photo assistant there painting with light. And you could say it's HDR, but it's really not. It's just piecing the images together one by one. And we make sure that every table is lit evenly. And of course, the other issue is we're shooting strobe, blue light, tungsten light, ceiling light, omni light. So the whole trick, again, is to color correct everything and make sure it all looks, you know, you want the tablecloth to look white. You don't want it to look yellow in the spot because you're mixing 3 different lights here.
Right, because you're using a tungsten light to paint, so you need to make your strobe match the
right. We try to bring everything out. Again, this isn't a finished image. This is still one of the layered images. sometimes I have like 5 or 6 or 7. I like to work my workflow. Sometimes I don't only work in one image. I work in 4 or 5 images, and then I take those 4 or 5 images, save them as PSDs, and then I flatten them, and then I use sections of whatever I need to make the right image in a difficult shot like this. I mean, there are some shots you don't even have to retouch. Sometimes you just point the camera and shoot, man. It's just so perfect. But those.
So he's asking about a couple people asking about the dimmer switches. So you're just talking about the ones you plug into the wall between the light and
no, I buy. I don't remember the name of them. I should have had one here, but they sell them at B&H. I buy 2 types.
What? Never heard of them. What are you talking about?
I'm sorry. They sell them at.
Oh my God! Oh, we're having difficulty. This thing's ending. I don't know what happened.
They sell them at Adorama. They sell them on Amazon Prime.
Good.
No, but they don't sell them in your.
Oh, see, he's gone now. That's because he mentioned B&H. That's what happens when you mention B&H.
But they're types. My internet connection got unstable. But anyway, the dimmer switches are purchased. They're designed solely for photography. There's one that will handle up to 1,000-watt bulbs, and then others that you can only max out at about 500. So I carry about 7 or 8 or 10 of them, literally, because you never know how many you're going to need, because you may have, if you saw some of those suites, there's 3 or 4 or 5 lamps. Then you may want to paint with light, so you'll need an extra one. And then there's always a fuse blowing in one of them. If you drop them on the floor, they're very delicate. So, but they aren't the typical dimmers you buy at Home Depot. How's that? Okay.
Right. You need to make sure the dimmer has enough power. Here, I'm finding
you got to make sure if you're using a Lowell, let's say you're using a DP or a Lowell total light. These are Lowell lights. I'm not talking about.
I'll put a link to an Adorama one in the chat.
I'm not talking about HDMIs. I'm talking about the Lowell, the smaller lights. We're not carrying around those big, 5Ks, whatever. But you're going to want one to make sure that it will blow the bulb and it will blow the dimmer. So you've got to buy the heavy duty ones, and they're already grounded too. So you don't need to put a ground on them
you'll toast your
very heavy. Yeah. But for the incandescent lamps and here's the other issue too. Hotels, remember a couple of years ago, they used those twirly little fluorescent tubes. I had to get rid of all of those and replace everything. And today LEDs, and if they're not dimmable LEDs, I've got to call engineering or whatever, and I got to go down there and I've got to beg for them to find me an incandescent bulb, or we got to send somebody out and try to find incandescent bulbs. But for the most part, hotels today have gotten it down with some really good bulbs, good incandescent bulbs.
Yeah. So there's a question about your team, like how big is your typical team size?
Okay. Here's actually, let me show you. Here's my team. Let me shout out to my team. This would be, can you guys see this, Dan? There's Heather and there's Alex at the computer. That would be my hotel gig. I don't travel with the iMac because we like the MacBook, and we're still using the old cinema displays.
Yeah.
The MacBook is color correct. The cinema displays aren't. There's a typical team, usually one more assistant. You got a grip. You can see the grip right there. Our set stylist, our prop stylist. And by the way, if you think this is all glamour, get a load of this shot. They probably don't even know I have this shot. I'm in a bathroom shooting, and the only place for the computer behind me is in the shower. So there's my crew taking a shower together. And you can see the typical rig setup, maybe one light. This stand, by the way, goes up about 15 feet. So it's one of my big stands. And I, kind of mix up Matthews equipment with,
notice how he's got the head wrong on that stand, guys.
Yes, the head is backwards.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be on the other. It's supposed to be on the knuckle. I'll give you a lesson.
Yes. Actually, no, we don't have the head. We have it set up because I think of the way the bathroom was, I think I was completely out of room in there. We had to set that thing up in such a
That
way.
is like that. That's basically exactly how you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
But hey, sometimes you have to do it the way you're not supposed to do
No,
it.
you don't know what we have to do sometimes.
Exactly.
And basically that's it. That would be the crew, by the way. That So in let's see what else. Let's go into maybe a little more. Can you guys see this page still? Here's another little great shot. Lights turned on, lights turned off. You know, here's a nice room shot. Here's where we talk about HDR. This was a rainy day, and the room just needed something. So what we did was we exposed for a long exposure and got some daylight coming through, and used the daylight in with the rest of the shot.
Right.
We just give it a little bit of feeling of. Sometimes you just need a touch of something, because a room can be really boring, really boring. So I can get into some retouching now. Other than that, by the way, when you're in, what's that question?
Yeah, let's do that because we're already pushing an hour.
Oh, okay.
And I got to pay Paul by the hour here, so it's like we can't.
Well, very, very quickly, I want to show you guys.
I'm sure that's what they want to see.
This is what we shoot for, by the way, banners. By the way, a lot of times you have to make sure your shot fits these banners, because
so that's for the web, basically. So do you use Capture One to like crop them to size while you're shooting to make sure, or you just kind of
absolutely. We create a mask. One quick problem. We did a shot many years ago for W Times Square. Room didn't exist. This is what the room looked like when I got there. They wanted the room wasn't finished. The furniture wasn't under construction. So a big challenge was, what the hell are we going to do here? Well, we start propping, we seal up the room, shoot it. Of course, I got myself permission to go out on the roof and get some really cool shots. And of course, after everything's said and done, the throws had to be changed from red to fuchsia to match the hotel. But anyway, those are some of the challenges you have to go through to try to put together a photo shoot, a room that doesn't exist, basically. A room that
so you basically shot the room without the view for the room that was going to have the view.
Absolutely, yeah. There's the room without the view, and then we had to put the view in later, and the view, it's there. But luckily, I knew this is the third time back at the hotel. I knew there was a roof about 2 or 3 stories up above, and I had to send over. By the way, certificate of insurance, real important. If you're going to do this kind of work, it's going to be insured, because when you go out on a roof, the hotel wants to make sure when you fall off, they don't, your wife doesn't sue them. So it's your fault. But you need to see a boat. So a certificate of insurance is real important when you're doing this kind of work. Okay. Yeah. One more quick thing. So really cool reflections. And here's Alex painting with light. Just a nice shot of Alex. Here's the shot without the light. And then we just kind of add a little light, and we put the shots together, and there you go. And
let's see show the BTS one again of him doing it.
Yeah. There's Alex painting with light. He's just kind of like, you could see him just standing in the shot. Doesn't matter that he's in the shot, because we're not using that part of the shot.
Right.
And he's just painting with light. Now, if you notice this shot color, again, the strobe, we used one strobe, dimmer switches. Here's the shot all color correct and finished with the right proper densities of the lighting. So we go from here, and you could see we're using that. One more cool thing. This is you'll go into a hotel room, standard room, hotel, very important. Luckily, this needed something again, and fortunate enough to be staying at the hotel overnight, checked the weather, made sure we shot the east-facing room, got up at about 6 o'clock, went into the room, and got the sunrise. So basically, there's your shot. By the way, I left the lamp. This is one of the shots where the lamp, Without those dimmer switches, that's what lamps look like. You guys can see that. They're real important. The same hotel, a little more retouching. Pay attention. There's no fire. They didn't have a permit yet. New hotel, and the wood wasn't stained. So of course, there's your finished shot with a fire. I promised the client I could put a nice fire in there. And where did I get that fire? From a restaurant I shot. Bam, there it is.
You know what's so funny? Go back to that, because I mean, it would have taken me a second to find it. I'm sure looking at it, but when you first showed me this, you were like, "Oh yeah, we had to do it twice." Because look at the mirror. Those are things you have to be.
We did have to do it twice. You know, it's funny because my wife was looking at that shot and she goes, "What is that there?" And I went, "Yeah, you had to do it twice because it was in the mirror." So
let me
pull the shot up. Yeah, and as you shot, we had to color correct. But if you notice, it's not. We didn't paint this. We had to color correct it and stain. And of course, you can see the fire in there. Oh, by the way, just getting back to Omni levels. I'm a big fan of. Can you see that? No, you can't see that. Hang on a second. Wait.
No, you got to go.
You can see that, right? You can see this. There's my little Toto light, kind of sitting in for flame, just to sit in. And then this shared the restaurant, so I took an Omni light and shined it on the brick. Okay, and that thus, if you could see, so I didn't have to fake light the brick. The brick was being lit already. I mean, obviously the fire would light the thing. So
that makes a lot of sense, right? Because a lot of people might look at that and be like, "Well, we're going to add fire later and just not do anything." But by putting a light in there, you're already giving the brick this like warm glow that you would get later.
Absolutely, you hit the nail right on the head. Warm glow. You think of all these things later on, and So another kind of crazy shot. I don't know how much your time you got left, Dan, or what you're doing, but one more shot. This is one of my favorite shots. One of my favorite shots I've done over the year. I mean, I use this shot forever. It's just so clean, but it was a nightmare. We had about 10 minutes to do this shot because of the way the sun was hitting this part of the pool area at the W Atlanta, and W calls their pool areas wet. But anyway, that's what the shot originally looked like. I think it was this one here. No, it looked like this. We had no time. Engineering couldn't move those for us. They weighed about 1,000 pounds. They were strapped down. Everything is strapped down at these hotels. People walk off with everything. So I had to. I mean, this was a perfectly usable shot. Clients, I think, used this shot. Really nice shot. I personally didn't like it, so I went back in and I gave them this. And they ended up liking this much better. So, a few other things.
That one. Yeah.
What's that?
Okay. No, you said this, but then it took a second for it to actually change. So the finish, basically, you took those couches out in the back, which makes it
I had literally no time to.
Yeah, and I mean, that was the shot, right? The sun was coming from that direction. You needed to shoot it that way. And
again, everyone has to realize you kind of choreograph these shoots. You have a certain time limit per area. And of course, this was the only sunny day, maybe at that time, at that shoot, just a 3-4 day shoot.
Can you put it next to the other one? Put them both up at the same time so people can see.
Put them both up. And the key to shooting, this was the cropped image, but I'm going to put the key to shooting them is shoot more than what you think you're going to need, because you never know. Okay, I retouched it. I do, by the way, retouching it was building from whatever I had there to get to that final image. And I guess a lot of guys are like me. They're doing their own retouching. I mean, I come from the days when we started shooting those early guest informant covers. If you remember the word Cytex.
Oh God.
I mean, anybody that's anybody born in the 80s or 70s won't even know what a Cytex is. But when something had to be done, they would use a Cytex machine. But I guess photographers with Photoshop, and Photoshop has become, between YouTube and it's become so much more user friendly than the old days.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well, I remember when you only had like one undo when like in early Photoshops, like you literally would like, you'd have 1,000 versions of things because you'd have to keep saving it. Cause you'd be like, if I go 3 steps forward and I don't like it, I'm screwed. So you do something, you're like, okay, save.
I'm kind of remembering no layers either. I'm thinking.
No, yeah, no layers. Layers came later. Layers, but the undo
Layers
thing, I remember. And when they first did it too, it only had like 10, but even with 10 undos, it was like, oh my God, I can use the rubber stamp 4 times to make sure it works.
Right. So,
yeah, no layers either.
Yeah, share screen. I just want, so we can go back to my website. So if, like if sharing, there's the website, hotel images. By the way, a lot of hotels today are getting away from some of the formal and we're doing a lot. I just did a photo shoot for the Kimberly, one of the fine hotels here in New York. Stop sharing. I gotta go to the right. Share screen. Let me go to okay, Adobe Bridge. I love Adobe. Can you see Adobe Bridge? Yeah, a lot of hotels are getting more into this kind of like, let's just show the ambiance around the hotel. Maybe we don't need to show the room or the whole lobby. Let's have some fun with just some, different types of things for social media. So, this is, by the way, this is the Kimberly Hotel. This is their first employee. How's that?
Really?
Just a cool guy. The guy, 40 years, is working at the same hotel. Unbelievable. Isn't that great? Just a great portrait of him. He represents the Kimberly, but it's, it's this type of stuff that does well on social media. A room, a suite, this is not going to work on social media. Beautiful room shot, going to be great on their website. But this stuff's going to do so much better, and it's going to have so much more impact.
Yeah, and I think this is interesting, actually, a point to make, because if you are somebody that's been around, and I make this point a lot, is that sometimes you'll see changes like this and be like, oh, photography doesn't need the skill it used to be, blah, blah, blah. Or you still need to have a good eye. You still need to know how to do stuff. And even if you are an established photographer, you can shoot in these like newer, looser styles.
Absolutely. This is
another thing to offer.
This is this particular shot. I mean, we were doing a bunch of shots in the room, and we just threw the girl up on a thing, and there's nothing there other than high key light. I mean, the bed is actually right below there, reflecting that beautiful white light. So she's actually being lit by the sun. There wasn't sun; it was just kind of a bright day. So he's actually being lit by just big windows, obviously. So there's no light there, nothing. There's no, any kind of a, of course we can do it. Same thing here, really cool, shooting wide open, no lighting, just natural light, daylight. Same here, daylight coming through, no lighting. Same thing here, just a black and white portrait outside. So yeah, we've been trained to do all this high-tech stuff, but we can still do the simple stuff and the stuff that's can be done today, the social media stuff.
Wow, there's a lot of questions. Boy, Trevor, you got a lot of questions. So
Trevor, what's up, Trevor?
I'm gonna give all 3 of these questions and you can figure out how you want to answer.
Okay.
So do you use a sun position app to know where the sun is? Hold on. Is there a sun position that you like?
There is a sun position app. Yeah. I tend to use, I'm a little more old fashioned. It's funny you asked that, because my mentor, and back in the, when I was coming out of college and I worked with a photographer, Peter Vaith, I hope he's listening. But anyway, he's retired now, and he always taught me to carry a compass. And that was the thing. We always shot at sunrise. His big thing was, he was one of those photographers that always shot at sunrise and at sunset. Never in the middle of the day. We'd never shoot highlight. but we needed to know where the sun was. And today, you know, with your car, you've got a, you know, point, if you're on location, you know where the sun is.
Yep.
There's a compass on your phone, and I have the Sun app. It's an app on my phone. I don't use it as much, but it will tell you exactly where the sun is. And that went back to where that room that I showed you, where the sunlight coming through. We made sure we shot the east facing room. So go ahead, next question.
Right. So that's okay. Is there a position that you prefer for the sun to be in? I mean, I would imagine that's
Well, I mean, it all depends. I mean, that
right.
particular shot, look, Dan and I would be doing this in the studio if it wasn't for the situation. We have a fabulous daylight studio, and we have bay windows, and we are facing east, south, and west. And if you ask me if I had a favorite, I'm going to say no. They're all good, and depending,
Yeah.
and it's not the directional light always that you're looking for. It's the
Well,
indirect.
exactly. Like in the example that of the room with you want the light on the bed, right? With the shadow, you need it to be directional light. And the one with the girl sitting in the window with
Right.
that big open light,
Right.
that's more bounce light. So it's two different
That's
things.
bounced light. Now, yeah, going back to here, I asked them, look, there was plenty of standard rooms. You know, obviously the hotel wants to shoot their standard room because this is the room that most people can afford and most people are going to be staying in. You want this to be magical as the suites. So I asked them, let's make sure we get one that, you know, watching the weather app, and watching where the sun's going to rise. And same thing here. This is a kind of a room at the Hotel Rouge in DC. Not much of a great view. A nice standard room. I mean, a little deluxe, a mid-sized suite. If you notice, sunlight. This was shot. I started shooting this thing at like early in the afternoon, and I allowed the sunlight to hit through floor, but that sun wasn't touching the bed. So what we did, left the camera up, similar to the other shot, came back after, maybe this was summertime, came back around 7:15, 7:30, and bam, there's your shot. Sun was coming through. So now, again, you talk about HDR. You're not so much exposures, but you're matching. You need something to be exciting sometimes, especially with a view like that. I mean, that is just, you know, that's not a fabulous view. So let's make the room have some warmth and some sunshine on it.
Well, and also I think because you understand light and you have a good eye for it, that you make it look like it seems realistic. Like nobody's looking at that thinking, oh no, there's no way there'd be light on the bed. Like it feels right, you know?
It feels right.
So,
yeah, because it's all done. It's done. Again, exposure has a lot to do with everything too. You know, it's done in a way that it's not overkill. You kind of want to keep it simple and yet make it look like, we talk about some of those bigger room shots there. You want it to look natural. You want
and
it
the
to
color
look,
of the light.
right.
All this is super important. And I think sometimes because people would know that watch the channel a lot, that or you know, myself and Seth, if Seth's still out there.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we will talk about, you know, fixing things in post and this as in a negative way. And that's because if you don't know what you're walking into and you're not using like the concepts of how light works, then it looks really bad. But when you use it correctly, like you use it, it's like that's what you should be doing. Like that's the skill, is making it look like you didn't do anything and it just feels right. And I think that's really what I appreciate.
You know, it's funny. It brings me to this shot, the Warwick. Again, back to the Warwick. Fabulous. By the way, the Warwick is just a great hotel. Everybody should visit and stay there. And it's expensive, but it's just visit. It's just the Beatles. That room with the gold ceiling was where the Beatles held one of their press conferences, by the way. Very historical hotel. Cary Grant lived there. And I was in his suite, by the way. It looks exactly like he left it. You could still stay there. But anyway, this is the Warwick. And we arrived. And of course, basically, I'm just showing you, I shut the lights off in the room and just we were exposed. We wanted to see what was outside. So it's the winter time. We were scheduled to shoot this. We were behind schedule. What are you going to do with a room like this? I mean, we want to make it look natural. So there's a lot of things, a lot of steps I'm skipping over. This is with the lights on, and, you know, lights look like, you know, so we kind of play around, do a bunch of different things. This is with just the daylight coming through the windows. Of course, then now I'm going to show you my little bounce thing. We kind of like got the girl running. That's my assistant, by the way, one of my assistants. I have many second. I only have one Alex, but I've got many second and third assistants. And we shoot it, and bam, it looks like it's natural light, because how else are you going to do it? How else are you going to come through for the client? What are you going to tell a client? Oh, we can't do it. We don't have time to tell the client we can't do it. It's not the right time of day. It's not the right time of night. You just got to figure out a way to do it.
So actually, Jose, sorry, I skipped you before you asked this question about straightening the lines. At the edges, I think you're just using rectilinear lenses, but you probably have to do it sometimes, right?
A really good example, for example, I'm not going to use this one. Let me go into another folder here.
While you're finding
here's a good example. Here's a good example. If you look here, we might have shot this. I'd have to go to the original raw image to see where we exactly shot it. These lines are perfectly straight. I could have shot this with a PC lens. Probably didn't. What I did was I went a little wider, and I went to Photoshop, and I can actually, with the transform tool, I can do a couple of this lens correction, which I'm not a big fan of. I prefer to do it manually with the transform tools. And I'm able to skew. Are you familiar with the skew? Who's ever familiar with Photoshop? Skew, distort, all those transform tools. And basically, I find a way. You may lose, but I shoot for that. I shoot that, knowing that I'm looking in the camera, that in certain images, I'm going to have to be able to straighten the lines out, because otherwise it's going to look like I shot it with a super wide lens, especially in the smaller areas. This room, not so much. But for example, I don't think this room here, I don't think I wasn't using, it depends on my angle, my eye level. Dan, when you look through a camera, especially a wide lens, height has a lot to do with it and where you are. So
that's what I was going to say. The thing about using wide angle lenses that I think people don't get right away until they use them a lot is that keeping the lens level and not tilting it up or down or left or right will make the lines way straighter. This is why you use a tripod. Not just for long exposures. It's like you get that camera properly leveled on the tripod, and a good wide angle lens won't have that much distortion. It's when you're holding, you start moving it.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say a couple of these shots were done with the PC lens, but PC, the 19 had just come out, the 19 millimeter. Prior to that, I think Canon was the only one with a 20 millimeter, and I don't use Canon cameras, but there's, it's not perfect, the PC lens.
Right.
Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So you try as hard as you can, but you always know you're going to shoot sometimes a little wider. Certain shots are just going to line up. Bam, that's it. This is just a straight in shot. Everything's going to line up like perfect, straight, not a thing to worry about. You get into the smaller rooms, you get into the bathrooms here like this, and you got different angles. You tend to maybe have to pull things in a little bit, depending on the lens you use. This may not have been as wide a lens, may have been only 35 millimeter, which is not really going to distort that much. But
it's mostly stuff that's closer to the edges that distorts. So even just going wider to start with will help you, because then you're not getting that danger zone.
Right. Exactly. Here's a wide. This was I guess this was on the 6.7. I guess this was the 50 on the 6.7. That would have been the lens. 50 or 40 I was using. Would it sound right? Maybe, don't forget, it's a while back since we were using those lenses.
That 50 is pretty wide, though. It could have been a 43, but I think that was a 50.
Yeah, it was probably the 50, which, again, to explain to people, a 50 millimeter lens on a DSLR, a full frame DSLR, is just basically a normal lens. On a larger format lens, a 50 would be a wide lens. Hasselblad, super wide, whatever that is, 35, whatever, super wides. an 80 would be a normal on our old Hasselblads, and anybody
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
using Hasselblad, yeah, an 80 millimeter. So this might have been a 40 or a 50. So you could see but we wanted distortion here. If you go, you look for distortion.
Right. Yeah,
There's
exactly. You're going for a funky shot. I mean, that's the point of it, right?
exactly. And no one was more funkier than the W. The W was a cool. It was one of the earlier. It wasn't the earliest boutique hotels. I think the Paramount, the Ian Schrager hotels. You know, the guy that founded Studio 54. He started coming out in the late 80s with those boutique hotels. But I think W nailed it. W kind of nailed it for the ultimate, you know, their campaign, the warmth of cool. You know, they knew how to, and everything was Dutch tilts. That was a big thing. Make sure you do Dutch tilts. You know, that was the famous thing on set was a Dutch tilt. I mean,
Right.
we had, let me see, stop share. Let me see for images on the website from W. Can you see that?
Yep.
Light, and can you? Yep. Let's see,
Yep.
light and
You're up.
design. Yeah, let's see if we
It's coming in.
W. Yeah, here's a good example of W, which is timeless. W. Everything was angles, distortions. You needed to, you know, really. Here's a good. This is a good example of just tilting the camera away. I mean, having fun with it. Sorry,
Right.
having fun with it. Can you see that?
Yep.
That's straight in. I'm sorry, but I was just looking for the W stuff. Um, there's not too much more in there with that, but that's basic. Oh, by the way, one of the cool perks of this job. I don't have the original image. If you look at both of these images, obviously shot. One is W New Orleans in the French Quarter. Great hotel. That was my suite. I was shooting from my second floor balcony, and that was my hot tub there.
Nice.
We kind of course, it was on the shot list,
Yeah.
and that was also a suite on the W. That was, I guess, the Tuscany W on Lexington Avenue, and you get to stay in all these great, especially when you're doing outside shots. Not so much if you got to shoot the room, they're not going to let you stay in it. But if you're going to shoot the balcony and you get to stay there, that's part of the perks of staying at these fine hotels. Otherwise,
Right.
you know, you're not gonna end up staying there because the cost is ridiculous in some of these rooms. Although I guess now hotels are going to have to drastically start cutting back on some of their once they open up to get people back in, they're going to have to start cutting some of their rates. But let's see how it goes. Yep.
Yeah, probably. Well, we'll figure it out, I guess.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Brett told me he just got a photo shoot. I'm proud of one of our buddies, Brett, studio guys. He actually he's doing two shots, one in April and one in May, shooting out in Jersey, which is great. Things are starting to look up. Yep.
Oh, very good. Okay, so we're at 90 minutes, but there is a last question. We'll call it a last question, but then we can see. So I think you kind of hinted about this a little bit before, but it's kind of interesting. So when you're shooting in these rooms and they have like the black, they have the widescreen, the flat screen TVs, I should say, so they're black. So the question is, do they stick images in there, or how do you do it?
No, nobody. The only time you will see an image get stuck into a shot would be where I did the Kimberly. This is your black screen. Basically, they provide me with a PDF of their logo, and then I just pop it into the screen. And
Paul, it doesn't look like it's sharing for some reason.
Okay.
Stop it and start it again.
Let me stop share. Hang on.
Yeah, then do it again.
Share screen. Can you see me? All right. Let's go back. Share. How's that?
There it is. Okay.
Okay. Here again, that's the only time you're going to get a request. But when you're doing a room, And let me go back to, okay, let's just go right here. I just passed one. This is our fun room here. Check out the reflection. Can you see that? Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, you see, I mean, basically,
So there's a
I'm just
reflection.
reflecting. I'm just using reflections because I want to use reflections
Right.
because the black screens. So that's no one's going to have you put a, Eyewitness News or MTV or anything playing there, or even their logo on these things, because it's just stupid. It just doesn't. They are an eyesore. Let's face it, they're an eyesore.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally see that, because like if you think about a meeting room, I get it, because that's kind of, people want to see it like somebody giving a presentation, so they want to see that. But in a room, you don't want to. I mean, everybody wants a TV in their hotel room, but nobody wants to think about the TV in the hotel room. Like, you want to enjoy the room, especially in a luxury hotel.
Here's one where I kind of let it not go pitch black, kind of just reflects the curtains a little bit without really, overwhelmingly going completely black.
Yeah, it just feels natural, basically. Like if that's what it looks like.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just want to look natural. It's as if you were walking in the room when the TV's off. Yep. Well, by the way, just so you know, everybody get your certificate of insurance. You never know when you're gonna end up on the top of a church shooting a hotel. This is the St. Regis, and you're shooting this from across the street from the steeple. By the way, the steeple there in front of me that's blacked out, that's where I was supposed to be shooting, but it was condemned, and I wasn't allowed to. No certificate of insurance was going to get me on that part of the roof. Let's put it that way. But so make sure that's a big thing. You're going to do this business, get your insurance, get your compass, and get your color checkers. Make sure you guys white balance your film, and get some. All that equipment's available to rent if you can't own it. I mean, just rent it. I mean, you guys can. Rental is pretty. Adorama, by the way, Adorama is the place to rent. They have the greatest rental, Brooklyn and Manhattan.
Yeah, it's not the place to buy dimmer switches, though. Make sure you get those.
I'm sorry about that.
No, I get nothing if you buy something.
Listen. I bought I got. Don't you remember? I called you in the middle of a Sunday morning one time when I needed a quick camera, and I needed a spare camera. And at that time, I think it was a D7000, and I called you, and you had to pull one off the shelf for me because I was down, and those little D7000 Nikons were great little. I still have it. It's such a great little camera to carry around, light, small. They weren't full frame, but they were great spare cameras.
Yeah, it does a job. So yeah, thanks, Paul. This has been awesome. Always fun chatting with you, of course. We're both on.
Thanks for having me back again. Next time we'll figure something else out. We'll do another.
Yeah, we'll look at some of the retouching, because I think it'd be interesting to go into some more of that. I just think that was so interesting.
Go into depth. That's something a little more technical. People
if people want to see that, because that's something that I do not do. So it'd be.
I'm surprised you don't.
I am the worst Photoshop. I mean, I'm just not very good at it. But maybe we'll do one where maybe I can learn from you.
Yeah.
I mention you a lot whenever I do something, because I use the patch tool, and you showed me how to use it. I never used the patch tool before. And then one time you were like, "Look, patch tool," and I was like, "Aha!"
By the way, when you talk about HDR, Photoshop now has, for years. I mean, I use Gitsu tripods. You see my heavy duty tripods, and you had to make sure. By the way, when you're not tethered, this is another important tool here, your little cable release, right? Because you don't want to touch your camera ever. And I'm shooting really long exposures in many cases.
That's true. I mean, what I think is
what I was saying is you had to make sure, especially I'm very sensitive to the building didn't shake. If you're shooting on Lexington Avenue, like at the W on Lexington and the number 3 or whatever, with train running underneath it, but we had to make sure you never move the camera. And now Photoshop actually has the greatest tool for someone like me, auto align, because I'll have 4 or 5 exposures if I'm painting with light. And if one of those, let's just say somebody, I'm not going to say the stylist, I'm not going to say the assistant, It's never me. But no, if somebody kicks the camera, the client, anybody, and now you're screwed. You've just done a whole shoot. So, you get the shot back as close as you can, and they do have an auto align. But if the camera does move drastically, it's useless. But if the camera does move, that auto align feature is absolutely amazing. How it does it, how Photoshop, how Adobe makes our life easier and easier as we go along. It's great.
Man, it's so amazing what they can do. Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because sure, that happens. Like you'll go to make the two shots and then like it just moves a smidge and you're just like, oh, it's not, now I can't just drop it in easily. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, sometimes you don't know how. I mean, and we're tethered. And you hit Command K on your computer, you're nowhere near the damn camera, and you get it back and you look at it and the damn thing is, I mean,
it's just like off a smidge. You're like, what happened?
I'm gonna stop. I gotta show you this. This is a great story. We'll leave everybody with this story, but this is a funny story. Back in I'm gonna share, wait a minute. I'm gonna share this. Up in Vermont, I was doing let's see if I can find the damn shot now. Ha ha ha. Of course, now we're lagging. But anyway, the Chinese investors came in to the hotel and we were shooting. And that the trick was, of course, now I can't get the image up. It's on my website. Let me see. Where would it be? Lounging, design, and light. Let me see. I don't know where. If it would. Oh, it's right there. Okay. See this shot right here. This shot was done in Vermont in the winter, and we had about 8 minutes of sunlight on that mountain back there. Now, this shot would probably be perfect if it was summertime. Oh, I'm not sharing it, am I? Am I sharing it?
No, you are. You're sharing it. Yeah.
Okay. The candles were all lit. Candles are everywhere. All of a sudden, two things happened. The investors came by. We set up this thing, and we were shooting it in stages, and I had to make sure nothing moved. She got in front of my camera, the investor of one of the hotels, and literally backed up so she could get a picture of the table. Well, I was like freaking out. The client, thankfully, respectfully, she got absolutely crazy. But while this was happening, fire engines were blasting, and they hadn't fully gotten all their permits yet. This is the same hotel with the fireplace. They made us blow out all the candles. So between the woman standing in front of my camera, backing up, almost knocking it over, we had to blow out all the candles and start all over again. So these are the things you have to run into. But yes, the auto align is great.
That's so crazy. Yeah, that's funny though, right? But that's you get through it, and that's a funny story after. In the moment, not so much.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll leave you with that.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Thanks, but we'll have you back for sure. As this is your second time. You are a repeat guest, as they say.
I'm a repeat guest on your show. Yep. Very good. Thanks, Dan. And I say goodbye to everybody, and hope to see you guys soon in the studio.
All right, guys.
All right. Take care. Signing off.
All right. I'm going to end.